My name is Victoria and Hartley. I'm 29 years old, and at exactly 8:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after my father's funeral, my brother Derek walked into my bedroom and kicked me out of our childhood home with zero warning and 11 words, "Pack your things. You're out by Friday. This is my house now." I'd woken up 30 minutes earlier thinking it was a normal day. Still in my pajamas, coffee brewing downstairs, planning to organize Dad's remaining paperwork. Then Derek's footsteps in the hallway, heavier than usual, deliberate. He didn't knock. Just opened the door and stood there, arms crossed, face completely blank. "What?" I'd asked, confused. "Derek, what's going on?" "You heard me. 3 days. Gone." He turned and walked away before I could respond, his footsteps echoing down the stairs, the front door slamming with enough force to rattle the windows. I sat there on my bed, my brain unable to process what had just happened. This was the house where we'd both grown up. The house I'd lived in for 8 years while caring for our father through his brutal decline into dementia. The house that was supposed to be split between us. By 9:30 a.m., I was calling my friend Carmen because I had no idea what else to do. By noon, I was loading my belongings into her car, my entire life reduced to garbage bags and boxes, still wearing the same pajamas I'd woken up in. Before I explain what happened next and how I discovered the real reason Derek threw me out with zero explanation, let me know where you're viewing from and hit subscribe if you've ever discovered that the people you trusted most were plotting against you all along. To really understand why my brother could stand in that doorway and coldly destroy my life in 11 words, you'd have to go back 8 years to when our mother Patricia died unexpectedly at 53. She'd been the glue holding our family together, the mediator between Derek's constant need for attention and my father Graham's emotional distance. When she passed from a sudden stroke, everything collapsed overnight. Dad had already been struggling with early-onset dementia for 2 years before Mom died. After her funeral, Derek and I sat in the kitchen of our Portland, Oregon home, staring at each other across the scarred oak table. "We can't put him in a facility," I'd said, my voice hollow with grief. "Mom would never have wanted that." Derek had nodded. "Agreed. So what do we do?" That's when I made the decision that would define the next 8 years. "I'll move back home. I'll take care of him." My job as a freelance graphic designer allowed me to work remotely, so logistically it made sense. What I didn't realize was that I was volunteering for a full-time caregiving job that would consume every aspect of my existence while Derek continued his life unchanged in Seattle, visiting maybe once every 6 weeks. The first year was manageable. Dad still had lucid moments. But dementia is a thief that steals incrementally, and by year 3, the man who taught me to ride a bike was largely gone, replaced by someone who sometimes didn't know my name. I handled everything. The medication schedules at 7 a.m., 2 p.m., and 8 p.m. every single day. The doctor appointments every 2 weeks, then every week. The adult diapers, the bath assistants, the meals prepared for his declining ability to swallow. The nights when he'd wander, confused and frightened, and I'd guide him back to bed until dawn. Derek would call every Sunday at 6 p.m., predictable as clockwork. "How's Dad doing?" he'd ask, making distracted sounds. "That's rough, Vic. You're doing great though." What he never asked was how I was doing. Whether I was tired, lonely, overwhelmed. Whether I'd had a single day off in months. My friend Carmen, who visited once a month, would watch the exhaustion accumulate in my face. "You're burning out," she told me after one particularly difficult visit. "Derek needs to step up." "He has his career," I defended automatically. "The architectural firm, the big projects." By year 5, my income had dropped by 60% because I couldn't take on larger projects. I was living off my savings, watching the balance steadily decline while Derek never once offered to contribute financially to Dad's care. The house had belonged to both our parents jointly. After Mom died, it was supposed to eventually be split between Derek and me. That was always the understanding, discussed at Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings for as long as I could remember. I depleted $87,000 of my own savings over those 8 years. Money for household expenses, for Dad's care needs insurance didn't cover, for house modifications. I'd requested Derek contribute financially at least 17 times and been refused every time with excuses about cash flow issues, despite knowing he earned over $150,000 annually as a senior architect. "I'll make it up to you when Dad passes," he'd said once during year 6, his voice casual. "The house will be split between us. You'll get your money back." I'd believed him. I'd believed every promise. The fatigue had made me naive. Dad's condition worsened dramatically in month 94. He stopped recognizing anyone, stopped speaking coherently. The hospice nurse told me gently we were looking at months, not years. Derek started visiting more frequently in those final weeks. Every weekend, suddenly. He'd spend time with Dad, sitting beside his bed while Dad slept. I'd thought he was finally stepping up, finally being the brother I'd needed all along. Dad passed away on a gray Monday morning in October at 6:43 a.m. I was holding his hand when his breathing simply stopped. I'd cried, but underneath the grief was relief. Relief that his suffering was over. Relief that mine might be too. Derek had arrived within hours. We'd made funeral arrangements together, sorted through Dad's belongings, accepted casseroles and condolences from neighbors. The funeral was beautiful, full of people sharing stories about the man Dad had been. Derek gave a moving eulogy. I'd squeezed his hand during the service, grateful to not be alone. That gratitude lasted exactly 21 days. The morning Derek kicked me out, there had been no warning. He'd called the night before asking if I'd be home Tuesday morning, said he wanted to drop off some of Dad's tools. Normal. Routine. Nothing to suggest what was coming. When he'd appeared in my doorway at 8:43 a.m., I'd actually smiled before I registered his expression. Cold. Decided. Pack your things. You're out by Friday. This is my house now. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Derek, I don't understand. It's simple. I own this house. I'm selling it. The buyers want possession by the end of the month, and I need time to stage it. So you need to leave. Your house. The room tilted. Derek, Mom and Dad always said we'd split everything equally. He shrugged, maddeningly casual. Things change. Check the estate documents if you don't believe me. Now please, just pack your things and go. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Then he walked away, just turned around and left, got in his car and drove off, leaving me standing there trying to understand how my life had just been demolished in under 2 minutes. I spent that day in shock, frantically searching through Dad's filing cabinet, trying to find the estate documents Derek mentioned. But the logical files were missing: the will, the trust documents, the property deed. Gone. Carmen helped me move into her spare bedroom on Friday, her fury barely contained. You need to fight this, Victoria. 8 years you took care of your father while Derek did nothing. I don't even know what I'm fighting, I'd said, exhausted. I can't find any paperwork. That Tuesday morning, 48 hours after I'd moved out, a certified letter arrived at Carmen's address. The return address was from Whitmore and Associates, estate planning attorneys. Inside were documents I'd never seen before, along with a cover letter. We are writing to inform you of significant irregularities we've discovered in the estate of Graham Robert Hartley. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the pages. What I discovered made my blood run cold. 3 years ago, year 5 of my caregiving, Derek had used a power of attorney to quietly transfer the house deed into his own name. The document showed Dad's signature, dated during a period when Dad's dementia had progressed to where he barely knew what year it was. But that was just the beginning. The letter detailed how Derek had systematically drained Dad's investment accounts worth $342,760. Regular transfers of $15,000 to $20,000 had been made over 3 years, always just under the threshold triggering automatic reviews. 17 separate transfers while I'd been changing Dad's diapers at 2 a.m., Derek was draining his accounts at 2 a.m., literally the same hours. The attorney, Helen Whitmore, explained she'd been Dad's estate attorney for 20 years. She'd created his will and trust documents, which explicitly stated all assets were to be divided equally between Derek and me. But 6 months before Dad's death, Derek had come requesting changes, bringing documents allegedly signed by Dad requesting the transfer of property and assets solely to Derek. Helen had found it suspicious, particularly given Dad's documented cognitive decline. She'd refused to process the changes and advised Derek that she believed Dad lacked mental capacity. According to her letter, Derek became hostile, accused her of being obstructive, and stated he'd handle it through other channels. Those channels included finding a less scrupulous lawyer willing to process the transfers without asking questions. Helen discovered this when she requested the estate file after Dad's death, only to find someone else had filed paperwork showing the estate had been dissolved, with all assets transferred to Derek alone. "I believe your brother has committed elder financial abuse and fraud," Helen wrote. "The transfers occurred when medical records clearly show your father lacked capacity. I've filed a report with Adult Protective Services. I'm prepared to represent you pro bono if you wish to pursue legal action." I read the letter 3 times, then looked through the documents. Bank statements showing systematic transfers. The fraudulent property deed with timestamps showing it was executed at 2:17 a.m., when Dad's care schedule documented he was heavily medicated and asleep. Medical records from Dad's neurologist documenting his cognitive impairment on the dates Derek claimed Dad had requested these changes. And text messages. Exchanges between Derek and the other lawyer. One in particular made me sick. "Need to expedite the asset transfer before the old man deteriorates further. Can you process everything by end of month?" The old man. Our father. Reduced to an obstacle. Carmen found me sitting on her couch an hour later, still holding the papers, my face wet with tears. "Vic, what happened?" I handed her the letter. Watched her face transform from confusion to shock to rage. "That son of a bitch," she whispered. "He planned this for years." "While I was sacrificing everything," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Derek was stealing everything. That's why he kicked me out so fast, with no warning. He needed me gone before I could discover what he'd done." Carmen gripped my hand. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the papers spread across the table. "I'm going to call Helen Whitmore, and then I'm going to make Derek regret underestimating me." That afternoon, I met Helen in her downtown Portland office. She was in her early 60s with sharp eyes and a direct manner. "Your brother made several critical mistakes," she told me, laying out documents. "First, he didn't realize I kept detailed file notes documenting every interaction with your father, including concerns about his declining capacity. Second, he was sloppy. The timestamps on these transfers show they were executed at 2 a.m., supposedly with your father's signature. Your father's care schedule proves he was medicated and asleep." She pulled out another document. "Third, and this is the big one, he didn't know about the video." "Video?" I asked. Helen smiled grimly. 4 years ago, when your father came to me to draft his will, he was still lucid. He recorded a video statement on camera, explicitly stating his wishes. He wanted everything split equally between you and Derek. He specifically mentioned you by name, saying, "Victoria has sacrificed so much to care for me, and I want to ensure she's provided for." That video is legally admissible evidence. I felt something crack inside me, not breaking, but shifting. So what do? "We file a lawsuit challenging the transfers, citing elder financial abuse, undue influence, and lack of capacity," Helen said. "We also file a criminal complaint. What your brother did isn't just unethical, it's illegal. And we have an extremely strong case." Over the next week, I documented everything. Every text message from Derek over 8 years showing his pattern of broken promises. Every Sunday phone call where he'd asked about Dad but never offered help. Every missed visit. Every time he'd claimed to be too busy. Carmen helped me create a timeline of Dad's cognitive decline, cross-referenced with dates Derek processed his fraudulent transfers. Every major transfer occurred within 2 weeks of a documented medical assessment showing Dad's worsening condition. He was racing against time, Carmen observed, trying to get everything secured before your dad declined to where it would be legally impossible. I'd also called Dad's hospice nurse, Gloria. When I explained what happened, there was a long silence. I need to tell you something, Gloria said carefully. About 2 months before your father passed, your brother tried to get me to witness some documents. Said they were medical forms, but when I looked closer, they were property transfers. I refused. Told him it wasn't appropriate, especially given your father's condition. Did you document that? I'd asked. I made a note in my patient file. I can get you a copy. Another piece of evidence. Helen filed the lawsuit on a Monday morning exactly 3 weeks after Dad's funeral. The complaint outlined every fraudulent transfer, every instance of elder abuse. She also filed an emergency motion to freeze all assets, including the house sale Derek had arranged. Derek's response came via his lawyer 36 hours later, a furious phone call demanding to know what right I had to challenge legitimate estate planning. Tell your client, Helen replied coolly, that he has the right to remain silent. Because if he's smart, that's exactly what he'll do until he retains a criminal defense attorney. 3 days later, Helen called to inform me the district attorney's office had reviewed the evidence and decided to open a criminal investigation into Derek for elder financial abuse, forgery, and fraud. They're very interested in those 2 a.m. transfer documents, she said with satisfaction. That evening, Derek called my phone for the first time since he'd kicked me out. I'd blocked his number, but he used a different phone. I let it go to voicemail. Victoria, what the hell is going on? I just got served with a lawsuit? You're accusing me of fraud? This is insane. You need to call me back immediately. We're family. This is family business. We can work this out without lawyers. I deleted the message. 15 minutes later, another call from another number. Another voicemail, his voice tighter, more desperate. Vic, seriously, this is getting out of hand. Whatever you think happened, you're wrong. Those transfers were Dad's wishes. He wanted me to have the house. You're going to embarrass yourself with this lawsuit, and you're destroying our family over paperwork. The word paperwork made me laugh, hollow and bitter. Our father's life, his agency, his final wishes, reduced to paperwork. By the end of the night, he'd called 17 times from various numbers. Each message grew more desperate. The confident, cold brother who'd kicked me out was unraveling in real time. The next morning, Derek's wife Stephanie called, the first I'd heard from her since Dad's funeral. Victoria, I don't know what's going on, but this needs to stop. He's been up all night. He's a wreck. Whatever you think he did, I'm sure there's an explanation. Did Derek tell you what he did? I asked calmly. He said there was some confusion about estate documents, but that he handled everything legally. Stephanie, Derek forged documents while Dad had severe dementia to steal his entire estate. There's video evidence of Dad's true wishes. There are medical records proving Dad lacked capacity to sign the documents Derek claims he signed. There are text messages where Derek discusses expediting transfers before Dad deteriorated further. This isn't a family disagreement, it's elder abuse and fraud, and the district attorney agrees. Silence. Then, quietly, the district attorney? Derek didn't mention that part. There's a criminal investigation now. Another long silence. I need to go. She hung up. Within 24 hours, Derek retained a criminal defense attorney. His new lawyer sent a letter proposing a settlement. Derek would return the house and 50% of the liquidated investment accounts in exchange for me dropping the lawsuit and not cooperating with the criminal investigation. Helen laughed when she read it. He wants you to give up 70% of what he stole and promise not to help prosecute him? The audacity is impressive. What do we do? I'd asked. We respond with our own offer. Full return of all assets, payment of your documented caregiving expenses, all $87,000, plus legal fees, a written apology acknowledging his fraud, and his cooperation with the DA's investigation. If he refuses, we proceed to trial. Derek's response came 48 hours later. Counteroffer. Return the house and 75% of the investments, payment of half my caregiving expenses, no written apology, no cooperation with criminal investigation. Not good enough, I told Helen. I want everything. The breakthrough came when Derek's lawyer called Helen directly, off the record. My client made very poor decisions, the lawyer admitted. But between you and me, I don't think he fully understood the legal implications. He's willing to return everything: house, full investment accounts, caregiving expenses, legal fees. He'll provide a written statement acknowledging the transfers were improper. But he's terrified of criminal prosecution. Is there any way to resolve this without charges? Helen looked at me across her desk. It's your choice, Victoria. We can push for criminal prosecution, and there's a strong chance he'd be convicted. But that's a long process that could take years. Or we can take everything back, make him admit in writing what he did, and move on. The written statement becomes public record, permanent proof of his fraud. I thought about it for a long time. About Derek standing in my bedroom doorway at 8:43 a.m. telling me to get out. About 8 years of caregiving while he lived undisturbed. About systematic theft disguised as estate planning. But I also thought about what I wanted my future to look like. Did I want to spend the next 2 years in courtrooms, reliving Dad's decline? Or did I want to take back what was stolen, document Derek's crimes for public record, and rebuild my life? I want it all back, I said finally. Every dollar. The house. Full reimbursement. Written admission filed with the court as public record. But I'll agree not to push for criminal charges if he cooperates fully and immediately. I want this done within 30 days. And if he refuses? Then we go to trial, and I'll testify at his criminal hearing. Derek signed the settlement agreement 23 days later. The paperwork transferred the house back to the estate to be properly divided. The investment accounts were returned, though he'd already spent nearly $90,000 on a down payment on a luxury condo in Seattle and a Tesla Model S. He liquidated those purchases at a loss to repay what he'd stolen. The written statement he provided was brief but legally binding. I acknowledge that I improperly influenced my father Graham Hartley to execute property transfers and financial transactions during a period when he lacked mental capacity to make such decisions due to advanced dementia. These actions constituted elder financial abuse. I caused significant harm to my sister Victoria Hartley, who provided full-time care for our father for 8 years while I failed to contribute appropriately. I have returned all assets to be properly distributed according to my father's original estate plan. Helen had the document notarized and filed with the court. Public record. Permanent proof of what Derek had done. The day the settlement was finalized, I went back to the house for the first time since Derek had kicked me out. It looked the same from outside. Same blue shutters, same porch swing, same overgrown garden. But walking through the front door felt different. The house was empty, furniture covered with sheets, Dad's presence gone. This wasn't Derek's house. It wasn't even really my house anymore. It was just a building, 4 walls and memories. I wandered through the rooms slowly, saying goodbye. Dad's bedroom, still smelling faintly of antiseptic. The kitchen where I'd prepared thousands of meals. The living room where Dad and I had watched countless hours of television, his hand in mine even when he no longer knew my name. Carmen found me standing in Dad's study. You okay? I don't want to live here, I said suddenly. Too many ghosts. So sell it, she said simply. Take your half, start fresh. That's exactly what I did. The house sold within 6 weeks for $740,000, split equally between Derek and me as Dad's will had always intended. Combined with my share of the investment accounts and the $87,000 in caregiving expense reimbursement, I walked away with approximately $510,000. It's been almost a year now since that Tuesday morning when Derek kicked me out at 8:43 a.m. without warning. Since the certified letter arrived 48 hours later exposing his calculated betrayal. Since I discovered that while I'd been changing Dad's diapers at 2 a.m., Derek had been draining his accounts at exactly the same hours. I used the money to relocate to Portland's Pearl District. I bought a small but beautiful condo on the 8th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows that flood the space with light, the opposite of those dark years as a caregiver. My graphic design business is thriving. I've rebuilt my client base and my income has exceeded what I was making before. I've started dating again, cautiously. I've reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with. I take yoga classes on Saturday mornings and go to farmers markets on Sunday afternoons and do all the normal things 30-year-old women do that I missed out on for so long. Derek and I don't speak. Not even a single text message since the settlement was finalized. The brother who kicked me out without warning no longer exists to me, if he ever truly existed at all. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that his marriage is struggling. Apparently Stephanie had serious questions about his character after discovering what he'd done. His architectural firm partnership became strained when word got around about the investigation and the public court records documenting his fraud. Reputation matters in professional circles. I don't feel guilty about any of that. Actions have consequences, and Derek is learning that the hard way. The only real casualty is the relationship itself. Derek and I will never be siblings in any meaningful sense again. There's no coming back from what he did, no apology that could bridge that gap. He didn't just steal money, he stole my father's agency in his final years, exploited his vulnerability, and calculated that I was too broken to notice or care. I've learned some hard truths through this experience. That family isn't defined by blood but by behavior. That trust, once shattered, can't be rebuilt with promises. That sacrifice doesn't obligate others to respect you, sometimes it just makes you easier to exploit. And that the kindest people are often the most vulnerable to manipulation because we want to believe the best in those we love. Gloria, Dad's hospice nurse, sent me a card a few months ago. Your father would be proud of you for fighting back, she wrote. In his lucid moments, he talked about how strong you were. He'd want you to use that strength for yourself, not just for others. That card sits framed on my desk, next to a photo of Dad from before the dementia, when his eyes were clear and he knew who he was. Looking back now, I realized Derek kicking me out without warning was almost a gift, in a twisted way. If he'd been subtler, if he'd given me notice and explanations, I might have accepted his lies. I might have signed paperwork without reading it, trusted his version of events, walked away believing I wasn't entitled to anything. But by being so cold, so sudden, so cruel in that 8:43 a.m. bedroom doorway, he made me question everything. He made me angry enough to investigate. He underestimated me so completely that he left a trail of evidence a mile wide, confident I'd never find it. Have you ever discovered that people you trusted were taking advantage of your generosity? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit subscribe, because sometimes the most important stories are the ones about finding your strength when you thought you had none left. Derek thought 8 years of caregiving had broken me down, made me weak and compliant. What he didn't understand was that those same 8 years had taught me how to survive impossible situations, how to persist when everything seemed hopeless, how to advocate fiercely for someone who couldn't advocate for themselves. I'd spent 8 years caring for someone who was slowly disappearing. In the end, I learned I was strong enough to fight for that autonomy even after he was gone, to honor his true wishes against someone who saw his vulnerability as an opportunity. And that strength, unlike everything Derek tried to steal, was something that truly belonged to me.